All right, everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and welcome to the Friday Audio Masterclass, What Makes Audition Great, Part 3, Mixing and Sound Designing. And this is the third installment of this What Makes Audition Great series. Probably going to be the last one. So if you have any additional questions about what makes it great, of course, you can go back to all the archives here on Behance and Adobe Live and my own YouTube channel. But if you have any other requests, we'll do those later. But I figured this was one kind of last chance to really showcase the ease of the mixer. I kind of failed on the last one where I was showing you recording and how easy it was because I got really lost in the weeds with all the details, which is great if you really want to know how it all works. But I'll tell you, I left that stream, I was a little unhappy with myself. So today, we're really going to try and make this concise and simple and easy, and I'm going to start by, first and foremost, just breaking this down against a classic analog mixer. So if you've ever done any mixing, or if you're familiar with how any of those things work, or more importantly, it just follows a very industry standard kind of workflow when mixing. So this is going to make things real easy. You don't have to set up special environments. You don't have all these weird panels where things live. It's really pretty straightforward, and it makes it easier to just kind of get started creating very, very quickly. So as always, we're coming to you live on Adobe Live, Behance, YouTube, and Twitter Periscope. So thank you so much for joining today. I can see we've got Steve, Kosaboom, Umakorn Browers here, Lindsay Palmer, Afrosia, nice to see you, Reverb Mike and Valdare, Wade, Theo, how's it going? Rick Adams, Polk Music, and Ferry, great to see you. We've got Karthik Cherry, hi, how's it going? Tejas Prajapati, very nice to see you. Oh, coming to us from India. And we've got Sleepy Rut and Des, how's it going? Wanted to remind everyone, too, that I will be, of course, monitoring the chat live over at Adobe Live. So b.net/Adobe Live. This is the live chat that I'm following on my channel. I will be able to answer your questions at the end of the stream. So if you want to wait until the end, stick around. I can answer some stuff there. But this is the chat that I'll be following as we're doing today's lesson. Okay, so one thing before we get started. Now, many of you saw me several months ago. We were doing some masterclasses around Premiere Pro Productions. And I believe I was showcasing some of my younger son's, some of the videos he shot during this quarantine and lockdown with this little shark puppet, hand puppet character. And I kept calling him Shark Puppet Imposter because there's already a shark puppet on YouTube. Well, finally, the other day, he came up to me and he said, you know, Dad, you don't have a channel trailer. I want to go to my shark puppet stuff and I want to make you a channel trailer. I said, okay, well, that's great, but you know, you have to edit it. You have to do the work. And he even had a theme song in mind. So we recorded the theme song together. He wrote it. It was off of this whistled theme, and he put it together. So I just thought before we do anything else, I would just kind of, a little self-plug there. You can watch it on my YouTube channel. It's real cute. Maybe you'll hate it. I don't know. But this is what it looks like. Let me go ahead and switch over here. I'm going to take myself out of the screen momentarily. And this is, what is this called? Shark Puppet Imposter endorses my channel. All right, here we go. Check this out.
What, you oversleep?
Yeah.
What now?
Press the like button, or else I'll oversleep again. Okay. I overslept.
I just can't get enough of it. It's probably not funny really to anybody else, but gosh, you know, it just cracks me up. And he did all of that. He found the motion graphics template. Again, he came up with the little theme song there. We recorded it together just in a single take, whistling together. It just cracks me up. So I've decided he's going to now do all of my channel trailer things because he's 8 and he knows the scene. And I'm old. So there you go. Okay. Thank you. Ferry likes it. All right, very good. Valdare, Chris, Wade, Golden Rose, Umacord. Very nice. Lindsay Palmer, a creative family. Thank you. Ketrin, Afrosia. All right, very cool. Very nice. Sleeveless in the saddle. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead now and switch over to Audition. And we're going to start, as I mentioned, with something a little unique today, which is talking about the signal flow of the mixer. I'm sure just what you wanted to hear. But this is super important because, again, I'm trying to showcase that if you've ever done any mixing... Oh, and it looks like my camera moved a little bit. Arg. We can still see everything, I think. Oh, I gotta move it just a little bit. Oh, it moved! Yeah, I keep switching the lights and I keep adding cameras and things, but it's not quite so easy. Maybe that's okay. All right, I'm not gonna worry so much about it. It's like changed the zoom on me there. What happened? Okay. So on the left we have Audition's mixer, and on the right we have a traditional Mackie mixer. All right. Hold on. Let me just see if I can zoom this out a little, just to showcase that the signal flow and really the layout. There we go. That's a little bit better. Hold on. I'm going to move this over so you can just see exactly what I'm talking about here. All right. Bear with me for a second. Okay. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So when we look at the mixer signal flow, it's important to understand that you need to kind of know this, all right? Now again, here I go into details, but yeah, where else are you going to get this stuff? This is where you're going to get this stuff, okay? It follows a very standard signal flow, from input to insert to sends, effects sends, to equalization, to panning, to your fader, okay? It all works in the same kind of way. So, as we look at the Mackie, so up at the top, those quarter-inch inputs actually, well, above those there are inputs for microphones or whatever. Those quarter-inch circular inputs that you see in silver, those are your effects inserts. If we look at the Audition mixer here, and I'm going to zoom in, all right? Up at the top we have our inputs, so this would be your, the microphone that you choose or whatever your device is. This is your telling it what output you want to go to. That's a little added thing. But then we have the effects inserts. This is the same as that little silver quarter-inch connection that you have there. This is where you would insert effects like compression, or maybe you insert an EQ, or maybe you insert some other type of effect that's going to go to the effect and return it right back to the channel. Okay? Very, very standard. Now, on the traditional mixer here, we have our gain compensation, our gain adjustment here for gain staging that input. Then we have our effects sends. Those are represented in red on the Mackie there, just below. Why can't I get the hand thing going? That way. It's there. The red button, the red buttons, the red knobs. Those are effects sends. Here in Audition, effects sends. Now, this Mackie mixer has 2 of them. We have 16 of them here. Okay? Very simply. And, this little button that you see here, this is our pre and post fader send. Now, those are not located in that location on the Mackie mixer. Those are over in the master section. But all the same stuff still applies. Then below that, you have your equalization. Those are the knobs that you see represented in blue. This is a fairly inexpensive mixer, so it's fixed equalization curves, or I should say fixed equalization center points at fixed hertz. So you have low, medium, high. I think it's 100 hertz, 1K or 2K, something like that, and then 8 or 10K. Here we have our equalization. This is a fully parametric equalizer here in Audition, but again, same thing, right? So again, it's the same path. And what that means is as your signal travels through the mixer, it hits the insert stage, the sends stage, the EQ stage, okay? Beyond the EQ on the Mackie in black, probably looks a little bit gray here, you can see that first channel is panned over to the left. We have our pan, also known as a pan pot. Same thing here. Here's our pan control in Audition. This is also where we have on each channel a little sum to mono button. We're going to showcase this in a little bit when we're playing through some stuff. This is really nice. I always tell people if you're going to go out to broadcast or do anything high-level pro, always check for mono compatibility for a number of reasons. That's where you can find that. Now, the one difference here is that because this is an analog mixer, we don't have mixer automation. If it were a digital one, you might see something like this. So here's where we can enable all of our various, sorry, you can't see that. Let's move the screen over. Mixer automation options here. Okay. And then we have the fader, the actual fader, and that is the white fader. I'm giving up with the hands. That's the white fader that you see down at the bottom there, okay? So the point that I'm making here is that if you've mixed on a mixer, or if you're kind of familiar with how things work, or you have any concept of that, or if someone asks you, you can say, yes, Audition has the same essential signal flow as a traditional mixing console, all right? So this makes it kind of easier to understand if you're sort of into audio, and if you're new to audio, now you know that it's very standard. Let me just tell you this, while, Pro Tools and all the others also follow standard signal flows, it's not quite as standard to necessarily add effects and make things work. Audition works pretty much like an analog mixer in that sense. So that's what we're going to get into now. Okay, so let me go ahead and switch my view over here to our traditional screen. Goodbye, Mackie Mixer. All right. Just checking here. All right. All right. Da-da-da-da. I'm looking. Are you saying Are you hearing phasing? Oh, I wonder. You shouldn't be hearing any phasing. Are you still hearing phasing? Nothing has changed. I realized there might have been some on that because I did. Yes, sorry. Okay, on that other shot, yes, I had the audio input duplicated. I just made that shot before the stream. Should be fine now. Thank you for that, chat. Yes, okay, yeah. What are you gonna do? That's why I do it live, friends. Okay, so let's get into an actual mix here, okay? Ugh, now I'm annoyed at myself for that too. Great, thanks, chat. Thanks for... No, I'm just teasing you, it's fine. It's that kind of Friday. Who's ready for the week to be over? Me. All right. So let's go back to an old session of mine. This is literally 20 years old. Played this before. It's a cover song called Fabulous. Pretty standard track layout here. This was actually recorded on a digital tape machine, a DA-88 years ago. Vocal on track 1, Rickenbacker bass, drums, acoustic guitar, electric fills, and then an overdubbed vocal. All right. Currently, nothing is panned, nothing is mixed at all. Let's just take a quick listen to this in mono. I'm going to grab my headphones here before we start playing around with stuff, all right? Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I always knew I was crazy for you. Now I know. Fabulous. Okay, so again, where do we begin processing? Where do we begin doing stuff? So you can do everything in the mixer as I just showed you, or you also have the option here to do it in the track headers along the left-hand side. And I think I may have pointed this out last time. So there's 4 essential buttons up here at the top. Your first one are your inputs and outputs. Again, this is all the same stuff that you have in the mixer, and it flows in the same flow. It moves in the same direction, right? So remember, top to bottom, inputs, effects inserts, sends, EQ, same thing. This is all the same stuff that you have in the mixer. I typically start doing it here because I like to see the waveforms as I'm going through it, because I tend to shift around and move around a lot. So if we were to start with something like, let's start with something like the drums here, and we'll go into our effects inserts, okay? Now, for inserting effects, you can insert anything. Now, again, there's no rule. Typically, though, insert is kind of what's known as a send-return effect, meaning that you send something at its current amplitude to an effect, all of it goes there, it's processed, and it sends it all back to you. So you wouldn't typically use an insert for something like reverb, because typically you want to be able to control the reverb separately from the dry signal, but we allow you to do that. You can do that if you so want to. The most common insert effects, like I mentioned before, are compression limiting, gating, you might insert a gate, or EQ, all right, or some kind of additional EQ. So let's start with something like a traditional compressor, just to kind of pump up and thicken up these drums. So from the effects insert panel here, by the way, you also have 16 inserts, right? That little Mackie that I showed you that has one insert per channel. And you wouldn't typically insert 16 things either. Like, we just give you 16. But if you're inserting 16 effects, you're probably doing too many, to be honest. Not that you can't, it's just a thought. All right, now we have a lot of native compressors here. For the sake of this today, I'm going to showcase some of our third-party plugins. You all know I love Waves, and because we're dealing with drums, and these are actual 1970 Ludwig drums recorded in my former studio with a homemade natural echo chamber. So the echo and reverb that you hear on these was in the recording because I set it up that way. I'm going to go with the Puig Child, which is the an emulation of a Fairchild limiter commonly used at Abbey Road and on like all of Ringo's drums, okay? So we can insert this effect. Let's go ahead and solo this. So again, as we're playing this stuff back, I can simply solo. Now I hear just drums.
Well, I always knew.
I can mute things very easily, so you have your mute button, your solo button, and your record button. Little tip, if you want to solo multiple things, okay, you just keep clicking. And then you can unsolo accordingly. Now, if you have a bunch of things soloed and then you want to isolate one again, you're going to hold down the Command or Control key. So again, solo allows you to solo things simultaneously. But if you want to say, oh, you know what? How does that bass sound? Hold down Command or Control, and it'll isolate that one back to the drums, okay? So we're going to set a little compression on here. Now again, this is not a native effect. This is a third party, a Waves effect here. But this functions really, really nicely. You have your input gain here, your threshold control. And remember, your signal must exceed a certain threshold for compression to begin. Your time constant in this effect, this again is emulating this Fairchild limiter. This is essentially an automatic attack release setting. So, and each of those has a different feel to them. So part of what made this particular compressor so unique sounding is that you're sort of timing it against, you have to watch that gain reduction meter. And what you're trying to find is the timing of those drums so that you can get things really tight and punchy, or maybe it's almost compressing in time with the rhythm or the pace of the performance. Using different time constants will give you really accentuated styles of compression if you so desire, also kind of used in conjunction with input gain. You can do this with ours as well. Most of ours have manual settings for attack and release. In fact, I'm trying to think if we have, do we have auto attack release? We do in the limiter effect, I believe. Let me check here. Or dynamics, sorry, not limiter. Dynamics. Do we have auto attack release? Oh, we don't even have that in here. It's all manual. I can't remember if we have an auto attack release on anything. Now you might think, why would you not want manual control for that? Well, if you're an audio person, manual control is essential. But again, something like this, to emulate that sound, they didn't have manual. It was auto with settings. You had 6 options here. So it's just part of that sound. All right, so let's start adding a little compression to this, okay? So first I'm just going to give it a little bit of input gain to boost things up. Remember that compressor limiters are really amplifiers first and foremost. All right, now I'm currently at the fastest time constant setting, and you can see that meter is really returning back to its native position quickly. And I'm going to start increasing the threshold here so that we begin compressing that signal. Now you can see at this time constant 4, that meter isn't returning, meaning that it's keeping the gain reduced all the time. So it's just squeezing everything down. So if there's a moment where things stop coming up, can hear how that first kick kind of sucks it back down again and begins recompressing. So this is telling me this is obviously a slightly longer attack, a slightly longer release, right? So probably somewhere around 2 is the most musical for this particular performance. And I'm going to give it a little makeup gain as well. So without, with. Okay? Real simple. So inserting some compression. Thank you. My God. All right. Now, in terms of adding sends or effects or reverb, right? Now, again, we could insert a reverb right here. I've done this on stream. Sometimes I actually do insert reverbs if I'm not going to be sending multiple signals to them. This is not a particularly standard way of doing it. Some apps actually prevent you from inserting things like reverb. Again, you can, but that means that that wet-dry balance, the dry signal of the drums and then the wet sound of the reverb are contained in the effect in here. So that isn't necessarily the most ideal way. So another alternative method of creating what's known as a reverb bus is to use sends. So you can do this in a number of different ways. If you go up to the multi-track menu up here, under tracks, you can see we can add mono bus track, stereo bus track, 5.1 bus track. So we're going to create a separate bus, a separate fader that only contains that reverb effect. And then using those effects sends, we can send, literally, the signal of the drums to that reverb. And then we'll have independent control of that reverb on its own slider and the dry drums on its own slider. So let's go ahead and create a stereo bus track here, all right? And it appears right below it's named bus A. So let's call this, we'll do like a hall reverb, okay? And here we'll actually insert a reverb effect, okay? And I'm going to use one of our native ones. Let's go to the studio reverb. I'll choose the Great Hall. Now, I'm going to switch over to the mixer for a second here. So we were talking about this control here, pre-fader or post-fader. So what this allows you to do, right now it's set to post-fader. When it's in this red state, that is the default. That means that it's sending the signal of the drums after the fader. So as you adjust that fader, it will automatically adjust the signal of the dry drums and the return of that reverb, okay? That's one way to do it. If you want totally independent control of the reverberated signal, you want to set that to pre-fader, and it shows you visually the send is happening before the master fader, which means that if you're in pre-fader, I could turn the drums all the way down to 0, but we would still hear the reverberated signal independently. Let me show you what I mean by that. So we're in pre-fader here. I'm going to turn on send 1, okay? We're going to choose the hall reverb. We need to tell send 1 where is it going. So there's the bus that we just made. If we wanted to make a new one, we could do it here. Send it to the hall reverb. And then we have individual control for how much level and then the pan, okay? Now, on the reverb effect itself, we have this wet-dry setting here. Now, because I'm sending the signal pre-fader, I want this fader to be only reverberated stuff. I don't want any dry signal. So I'm going to set the dry to 0% and the wet to 100%, okay? And now what's going to happen is I'm going to gradually start increasing the send amount, and you're going to start to hear the drums being reverberated. Take a listen. So, no reverb. Okay, now I don't particularly like that, but I'm over-accentuating to show you what this is doing. Now, as mentioned, because this is pre-fader, what that means is I can now fade out the drums on this right here and you'll still hear the reverberated signal. Take a listen. Oh, did the performance just end? Oh, sorry, I switched it back to post fader. What's happened? Here we go. Okay. No dry drums. So this is just the reverberated signal. So let's go to something else here. Let's go to my original vocal, all right, which is here. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to enable send 1. We're going to enable pre-fader. We're going to send it to the hall reverb. Okay, I'm going to turn off the drums for just a moment. And that's interesting. Did it do that when I chose? I wonder if that's a bug. Why it switched back. That's weird. Did you see that? I have to report that. Okay. We're pre-fader. Let's go ahead and send some of that vocal there. It's a strange place to start singing, okay? And
Well, I always knew I was crazy for you. Now I know you thrill me so. If this is love.
so you're still hearing the reverberated signal, but none of the dry signal.
Chills up my spine, and when we touch, I thrill so much.
What I didn't realize before, I've listened to this for 20 years. I was singing and playing bass simultaneously. I didn't realize that before. So here is the bass now with the reverberated vocal playing together. Let's wind that back a little bit.
Fabulous. Your lips close to mine bring chills up my spine, and when we touch, I thrill so much. If this is love, it's fabulous.
Doing a little bit of an Elvis-y thing there if you're wondering why I'm singing that way. Okay, so again, pre-fader send. Now, as mentioned before, if this were post-fader, you saw this happen with the drums. When it's post-fader, let me turn the drums off. Let's play the vocal.
Well, I read the book.
When I turn the vocal fader down, the reverb is gone.
Till I held you in my arms. Oh, oh, oh,
Pre-fader. Okay? Pre-fader, post-fader. If you understand those two concepts, this will take your mixing truly to a completely different level because you'll understand how to independently balance things. And this is really, really useful for sound design. I've talked about this in some of the sound design streams that we've done. If you've got someone, running away, if you've got Foley sounds and they're running away from the camera, you want to hear the dry footsteps sort of, dissipate over time. But you're still going to hear, if they're like in an underground garage. I was just watching that TV show Castle. I was binging that the other night. And there's some scene, they're in like an underground parking garage and they're running away from the camera and you just hear the echo of the footsteps. That's where pre-fader comes in because you can drop the dry level of the footsteps and raise or just maintain the echoey reverberant sound of the environment. Okay? Really cool, really simple. Again, really easy to set up. And we let you do it right here. So let's say if we were going to, something else. Let's say we wanted to do another bus, like a delay bus. Let me go into this acoustic. So we have this acoustic guitar. Let's solo this one. Then we're going to get into a little sound. So let me check our chats here too. Steve, hearing this one on the jukebox at the malt shop. Isn't that right? Right. Moat Avoid. Ain't that Fairchild is a 30-kilo tube monster, so it's not only about compression, but also saturation, gain, staging wise. Yes, exactly. That's why I said, remember, compressor limiters in general, they're amplifiers. So yes, it's all about pushing that input stage to give it that tube saturation. Because you mentioned it, clearly a little audio nerd friend of mine, this particular one also has the ability here to emulate mains hum. So 50 hertz for those of you in the UK and across the pond, 60 hertz for us here in the US, or you can disable that. So this truly emulates not only the tube saturation and overdrive characteristics of this tube-based amplifier, but also the inherent noise that would also be apparent in various locales of the world. So super cool, but yes, excellent comment there. Love that. All right, Han soloed, nice. All right. Yes, yes. Nice, okay, very good. Cool. Ferry, so if I use pre-fader, does it basically can decrease the decibels, but you can still hear the effects such as reverb or something else? Yes, so again, by using pre-fader, it just gives you independent control of your original vocal or bass signal and then the reverberated or affected signal. Now in this case, I used reverb, but let's go ahead and create another bus for this acoustic guitar, which is, we'll make a delay bus, all right? So I'm gonna make a new one here. So that's gonna be bus B, all right? I'll make that, this one maybe I'll make post fader because I'm gonna send exactly what I want to that, and I want it to return exactly, I'm not gonna use the delay separately. So I'm gonna use a post fader send for this one. And we'll come in here and let's go into, yeah, maybe the analog, kind of want a slapbacky sort of delay. Let's try this one first. This does have rockabilly. Let's hear what that. Let's try rockabilly first. I always love checking out the presets. I made a lot of these years ago. I don't know if I made this one, but 150 milliseconds is a little long. Let's see though. All right, let's go back and start playing some of this. This is very kind of percussive acoustic as well. So in this case, we've got a separate delay, but the difference this time is we're post fader. So when I lower that acoustic, the delay is going to go along with it. And by the way, I can send other things to that delay too. So if we go back to our vocal here, let's do send to, turn it on. Bus B, I didn't even name it. Let's call it delay. Okay. And maybe I want to send it slightly more to the right side. I'm going to put the vocal a little bit more to the left. Play it back.
Well, I always knew I was crazy for you. Now I know you thrill me so. If this is love, it's fabulous. Your lips close to mine, break chills up my spine. When we touch, I feel so much. If this is love, it's fabulous. Well, I've read the book, Love and its charm.
Okay? Really simple, right? And you can see how you can just start to begin stacking up different effects, sharing these buses if you're going to have multiple signals. Like I've got the acoustic going to that delay, and I have the reverb going to that same delay. It makes it easy. You can have as many buses in here as you so desire. starts to get a little unwieldy if you've got too many, but it's very common in a mix to have a couple of different reverb buses, right? You might have one. I kind of like that hall reverb for the voice. I don't like it on the drums. I would, it's too much. And the drums already have enough ambience anyway. So I would actually most definitely, yeah, I would disable that. I wouldn't even turn that on for the drums. But in the case of like the delay, yeah, I want that same speed slapback for my voice, same speed slapback for the acoustic. And then I've got these other elements, these other guitar elements in here that are playing. These are from a Fender Reverb, so they have some built-in effects on them. Okay? Pretty neat. Hi, Jason. Does every send have its own fader, Armando? Yes. So every send, it's not a fader in this case, but yes, every send has independent send volume control. So this is how much of that signal you're sending to the bus, and it also has independent pan. So even though I have my vocal here panned slightly to the left, I have it when it's sent to that delay, it's going more to the right, 35% more to the right. So that's going to not only give me a nice kind of a stereo spread, but the fact that it's also a slapback, it's going to give you kind of this very circular, typical of that rockabilly style kind of vocal sound. Now, if I really wanted to give it more, I'd probably give it some subsequent repeats, you know, like that style, or super fast, just a single slapback. But you can do all of those things. So yes, you have independent control for each of those. For those who want to play around with audio plugins, do a search for Tokyo Dawn Labs. They offer some amazing stuff for free. Oh, nice, Motivoid. Yeah, and people always ask me about free plugins. I don't know too many of them these days. So that's great. That's great for that suggestion. Okay. I'd always choose 60 hertz to get on the Billboard charts. Ah, you're very funny. Now, again, that is applying an actual 60 cycle hum that is variable. So keep in mind that if your studio, your recording location, you may already have a little bit of 60 cycle or 50, depending upon where you are, introduced into your recording. Be mindful of turning that on, because you're now going to actually have two separate types of hum, and it can cause some weird stuff in the low end. It may be, you know, very inaudible or somewhat inaudible, but as you master, as you begin to kind of finalize everything and compress or limit your entire mix, stuff it starts to add up, and it cannot sound super great, okay? So just be mindful of that. So real quickly, before we get to sound design here, again, I've played this before. This is kind of a more fleshed out piece. I think I've played this exact piece before, but here's one where we have, again, this is kind of a slightly more elaborate mix. This is from one of my kids' songs called The Toot Toot Monster. It has 6 different background vocal tracks, all of which are being bussed to their own background vocal bus here. And on that background vocal bus, I've inserted this Abbey Road red console. So remember, inserting EQ. So I inserted this kind of classic 60s style Abbey Road EQ to kind of brighten them up and give them a little bit of 60s edge. My favorite compressor, the Fairchild 670. And then this is one example, because it's the bus, I added reverb at the end of the stage on the bus. So this is another question that people ask all the time. You know, should reverb go at the end? Like if you are stacking effects. So here I have inserted EQ, compression, and then again on this bus, reverb. I might even put the reverb on its own thing. But again, because only background vocals are here, I chose to put reverb on this. But reverb is after the compression, it's after the EQ. If you put reverb before, that can be used as an effect, but particularly with compression, now it's compressing a reverberated signal. So for drums and things, it can actually produce some very cool, very loud and dramatic, big, boomy drum sounds. can also sound kind of 80s and super cheesy. So you typically want to put reverb at the end of a chain, okay? Unless you're trying to do something for effect or for sound design. So if we just take a quick listen to this little piece here, I think we're listening to some piano, some Fender Rhodes, some bass, some drums, and background vocals. This kind of showcases all of those things. And you can see this is not a fancy mix. This is what, 20 some tracks or so. You can see all of the various things that I have inserted here. Again, it's mostly compression. There's some EQs. This is another favorite of mine, the Mannequin. Here's an example of where I have an EQ, a compressor, and then another compressor. Not uncommon, especially these days if you're trying to do particular amplitude tweaks to things. I think I'm using the dynamics here as a noise gate. Yes, I am. So I'm using the gate on this one. But you can have multiple stages of EQ, multiple stages of compression. That is not uncommon, and that is very common in today's workflow. All right, so let's take a listen. So that's a real Rhodes. It's got some inserted analog delay. That's the real deal, man. Some piano. Now, I just want to talk about grouping for one quick second while we're here. So one of the other things you can do, and you can see that I did it here, is you can also, so you can group things. Theoretically, you can make a group through Ascend, but the more standard common way is to do that up at the top here. So remember, just like a classic mixer, this first one is your input, but then we have this output setting here. So in this case, what I've done is so that I can control all of the drums after I get their relative balances set, so I can control and process all of those drums together. Like I'll probably use a separate compressor for the kick, a separate compressor for the snare, separate gates on all the toms. You do process like this. Recording drums, multi-track, there's a ton of processing that gets involved. But in the end, I just want one fader that's going to have the drum kit mixed and sounding good. And then I can add compression and other effects to it. You're going to do it from up at the top here. So you can see that rather than just going to the master fader, right, our playout fader here, I'm sending it to a special bus called drums, okay? And then that acts as the master fader for the drum kit, all right? And then these faders stay open, but this drum fader, wherever it is, where do I have it? Where are my drums? Here, let me just, oh, here they are. This controls the overall volume of the entire kit now, right? But everything will maintain their relative pan positions, their EQ, whatever inserts I've placed on them. I'm missing a few here. This is an old session. That's just another way to group things together. So we refer to these as submixes in Premiere, sometimes known as buses, sometimes known as subgroups. All of those terms apply. That's yet another way to create that submix, okay? So we just listen to those drums. Kind of flat, to be honest. Not my favorite drum sound. Sum to mono, friends, is the best thing you can do to your mixes. Now, if you notice, when I summed it to mono, everything was still there. Like it didn't drop out suddenly. The bass was there, the drums were there, the toms were there, everything was still there. Even the reverbs could be heard. And then when I brought it back to stereo, everything just got very wide. You always want to check for mono compatibility because depending upon the types of effects you use, especially if you use delays or delay-based effects, so anything like flange or phase or actual delay or echo, sometimes the nature of the effect causes some phase discrepancies and bits of your audio can drop out. Additionally, if you're recording stereo signals, you might have something that was recorded out of phase. If you've got microphones on a drum kit and the pickup pattern, let me rephrase that, the focus into the microphone capsule is not discrete and it's actually overlapping another microphone's pickup, you're going to have, that's a very basic way of describing this, you're going to have out of phase content. So it's really important to check for mono compatibility. Now you might be thinking, who cares about mono? Everything is in stereo. Well, yeah, but not everything is always broadcast in stereo. And with a lot of streaming services, even things like YouTube and such, and certain television networks, sometimes if you're streaming and bandwidth drops, part of that default is sometimes they'll even sum things to mono, and then when the bandwidth returns, you'll hear it back in stereo. Broadcast radio still does a lot of things in mono. BBC still does occasional things in mono. It's just a good practice to be into. It's also going to let you know if there's other problems in your mix, in the stereo mix. So this is a really good thing to have, and you can see you've got it on your buses as well, and you'll have it on any track types that are stereo track types, okay? All right, let's go over to questions here. Lindsay Palmer, the stream cared a whole lot about mono this morning with Terry. Oh, yes, I heard he was in one channel, right? So now that's a little different, right? Because that's, now again, I don't know if it was just, obviously it wasn't in the center, you were getting it in one side. So that's mono, but it's single channel stereo, right? There's also a concept of dual channel mono, which means the same signal populating left and right, okay? So, but in this case, mono, summing to mono is going to take your stereo program, put it all over top of itself in the middle so that you can check to see if anything is dropping out or disappears. Okay, so for our last 7 minutes here, we're going to pull up an oldie but a goodie. We actually did this at the beginning of last year together. This was a sound design piece for a boxing scene using Adobe stock video content and some of our currently available free sound effects in Audition. So take a quick look at this one here. I'll make this full screen so you can see the video here. All right, take a look. Short piece, but super cool. And you can see, despite it being only 15 seconds, it was a buttload. Buttload, that's a really pleasant term. It was a lot of files, all right? There's a lot of files to make that. Every punch was stacked 3 or 4 times. Okay, so what I really wanted to focus on here, it's all the same concepts. Now, a couple of differences here, a couple nice things that we have. So you'll notice there's time code over top of the video here. Now this time code I actually burned into the reference video out of Premiere itself. If you right click though, you can go to Video Preferences. You'll see right away we have this time code overlay. So this will overlay the time code based on the time setting of your timeline in Audition. So this was actually done at 24 frames per second. So you can see here now, and again, because this is probably 2397, actually I could probably do a 23976. Let's see if these match up. Yeah, they're like, that's weird, they're a frame off. That's interesting. I wonder if that's a bug too. That shouldn't be. Okay, now they're catching up. Okay. So it was straight 24. Okay, so we can do that. I already have time code on there. I don't have to worry about that. If you go into video preferences, however, there's a couple cool things that are very specific to sound design. So this was something that we added a few versions ago. Spot video frame when adjusting audio clip. So what this allows you to do, I'll show you in a moment. Your playhead is that red cursor that's going down and moving throughout our timeline here. These little white cursors that you see, these are static markers. So again, as I was watching this video, I was dropping in markers to know exactly where all those hits had to be. This speaks to, again, Audition's accuracy when applying these type of effects and things. And you can see there's markers everywhere. Glove hit, soft hit, punch, and I was labeling them to give me an idea of the kind of, right hook, left hook, because I was also doing panning on the individual tracks as well, so that they maintained a natural stereo image. This is something else too. Now, of course, you have track level pans. This will pan anything on the track to a discrete position, but then you also have, put this back to 0, you also have clip level pan. So this is not unlike what you have in Premiere. So the yellow line that you see here, this is volume. Okay, and you can see as I hover over that, it's showing me the decibel level there. The blue line that you see is pan. So this is going to allow me to adjust the pan, and I can even keyframe the panning of this punch. Now again, this is a single boom, so you're not really gonna feel that pan so much. But for some of those sounds, you might want a moving pan. So this is how you can do that. You can automate and adjust pan and volume at the clip level or at the track level, of course. Again, nothing unique here, but we just make it really easy to do that kind of stuff. Now, something else that's going on in here is we have real-time clip stretching. So right here where we go into this we have that bass drop sound, and it goes into this sort of slow-mo punch. Okay, now again, that punch, which appears in slow-mo, is actually comprised of, in this case, about 3 or 4 different sounds. So we have like Foley footstep, cowboy boot, Foley fist hits table, pillow deep punch, and a bright slap on the abs. My abs. This is that whole thing. Okay, but this particular one, you can see here, we've increased its duration by 347%. That's going to slow it. Well, it depends on the method that we choose. If we go into our properties here in Audition, under stretch, we have a whole series of options here for how we want to stretch, elongate, or adjust pitch and time of a sound clip. In this case, I chose vary speed, which is going to vary the speed, meaning that if we make it faster, so like 50%, the pitch will go up. If we stretch it and elongate it, the pitch is going to go down, right, to make it that much more dramatic. So if we listen to this here, that's my pillow deep punch. Now again, there's all kinds of effects and things on this, but if we listen to it here, you can hear it's just a deeper, darker, thicker, right? It's actually me hitting a pillow. But to make it bigger, thicker, punchier, I increased the duration. And I did that simply by enabling this function here, global clip time stretching. And when I do that, you'll see we get these little handles, these white handles at the beginning and end of your clip. So as I adjust this, okay, this is now affecting the stretch. Let's drag it out again and listen. You can see it's getting darker, deeper, okay? Make it really small here. higher pitched. That's because we're in vari-speed. Now, if I do that same thing, let's do whatever it was, 300%, and instead I choose monophonic instead of vari-speed, it'll maintain the original pitch, but that's not what I want here. I don't want it to just kind of slow down that pillow punch. I want it to actually lower the pitch as well. Let's hear what that one sounds like. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of cool. Actually, it kind of works too. It's just a different kind of sound. So, but this makes it really easy to very quickly manipulate the tonality of sounds right in the multitrack, real-time, non-destructively. Now, that spot checking that I was mentioning before, again, I could set this exactly where I want it. And then you see, as I'm moving this clip around, let me zoom in so I can show you here. As we move the clip around here, this is now going to allow us to tell it exactly where we want it to go via this blue line. So this is going to very easily and quickly allow us to manipulate, oh, it's locked in time, that's why. Manipulate where that sound goes, okay? So we can really lock into the exact frame that it needs to be on and drop it right there, just like that. Okay? Real quickly. But friends, that is all the time we have. So have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Got the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge coming up next, so stick around for that. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.